and loud. All right, Gary. On one. On two. On three. Take me out to the
to see you.
You're listening to Krush Performance, your weekly source for sport performance and athletic development information. Get the Krush blogs, podcasts, and performance links at crushperformance.com. Now, here he is, the Crusher.
And welcome to Krush Performance, everybody. I am Jeff Krushell, and we're your weekly source for performance information. Hey, if you have questions, comments, smart remarks, reach out to me. Go to info@jeffkrushell.com. Follow Krush Performance on all the social media platforms. Direct message me there. And listen, we answer every single message we get. So if you need help with a program, or if you have a young athlete and you have questions, I'm not saying we know all the answers, but I can almost guarantee we know somebody in our network who will have the answers and will reach out for you. So please do reach out to us. And if you have a topic you'd like us to discuss on the show or something you'd like us to investigate, let us know as well. We've dedicated segments, even entire episodes to your ideas, and that's the great give and take between the Crushers and us, is this beautiful making each other think about maybe some things that we haven't thought about before. Well, today is no exception. I'm excited about today's show as the Major League Baseball season gets underway. We're about, I think, 15, 16 games in right now. And it has been a very exciting start. NBA is wrapping up. NHL is wrapping up. The NFL is starting to come together. We just had the Masters. There's so many cool things going on in sport. But I want to talk about baseball because there's a lot of things going on in the game right now that, one, if you're a young baseball player, you need to know about. If you're a coach of a team, doesn't matter what age, there's a lot of things you guys need to know about. And most certainly, if you're a parent, there's a lot of things you need to be thinking about. And if there's one thing that I would say, it's the injury rates in the game. All right, it's such a beautiful, fun game to play. It was one of my favorite sports as a kid, one of my main sports, baseball and hockey, and I loved it. And I remember going through arm pain when I was growing. And by the way, when your kids are growing, they are way, way more susceptible to injury in every single sport, by the way, but certainly in baseball with that crazy throwing motion. So today we're talking baseball. We're going to visit, and I'm going to, hopefully, if you haven't met this gentleman before, I'm going to introduce you to one of my great colleagues and friends, Jason Dickson, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Baseball Canada, former Major League pitcher, has just done some great work, and now he's really, really pushing the Baseball Canada program to new heights, and one of the key players there. Baseball Canada, listen, traveling all over the world with Major League Baseball. There's not a country or a program that I've been to that hasn't asked me what's going on with Baseball Canada. They're always on the cutting edge. They're always doing unique, innovative things to take advantage of whatever resources they have to help player development, but to just keep people involved in the game. That'll be part of our discussion today. I'm also going to ask Jason about the importance of the Olympics and the WBC, the World Baseball Classic, and what that means for the game. Certainly, what happens in Canada when the Blue Jays are as successful as they have been over the last couple of years? What does registration look like? Look, there's no other place in the world that has a major league team that represents an entire country, kind of like the Raptors in the NBA, right? Listen, when the Raptors are doing well, they have a country behind them. And it's kind of a cool scenario. So we'll talk to Jason about that as well. And then we're also going to talk about coaching development and some of the cool pathways that they're developing for players who love the game and want to pursue it. So it's going to be a great, great discussion. And in honor of our Major League or baseball season kickoff, I'm wearing one of my baseball shirts, Rub Dirt on it, okay? And I wear this shirt, and if you're not a baseball person, you might not understand. I get a lot of funny looks at this one, but, you know, rub dirt on it. You get bruised up or a cut, rub dirt on it and suck it up and get back to work. But there's much more than that. In Major League Baseball, all these beautiful white pearl balls, right? They come in and they're kind of polished and they're really slippery and smooth. So they take this very special patented mud, I think from the Mississippi River, and they rub every single baseball that goes into a game in this very special mud. The balls are rubbed up. So there's a certain number of balls before every game that come out of the humidifier. They get rubbed up with this special mud, and then they get sent into the game. So rub dirt on it. That's what that refers to. So we'll be talking a little baseball insider stuff today as well. Fun, really fun stuff. And then, once we're done with Jason, I just want to wrap up some of the points that he's going to talk about, and I want to share with you some of the things I'm watching for in this baseball season. So let's get to it. Here's our conversation with Jason Dickson, Chief Executive Officer for Baseball Canada. All right, everybody, I'd like to invite and introduce you all, if you haven't met him before, Jason Dickson, former Major League Baseball player and Chief Executive Officer for Baseball Canada. Jason, welcome to Krush Performance, my good friend.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, we were trying to pull this off just as the season kicked off, which would have been very timely, but I'm just telling you, the storylines keep coming and coming. What a great time, Jason, for the game of baseball from the big picture.
Yeah, you know what? I've been around. I've been around this organization for 20 years, and I don't know if it's ever been busier. I mean, I think we have everybody in the country talking baseball. With the Jays making their run last year, and then us making our run at the WBC. It's huge. Like everybody's talking baseball, so it's good times right now.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, I want to start right there because listen to me. Major League Baseball right now, I feel, is in such a great place. And I'm kind of basing this on the storylines and the ebb and flow of the game. But the last two sets of postseason play, oh my goodness. Let's go back, not last year, but the year before, right from the playoffs before the season, right at this when the season ended, the playoff races to see who's going to clinch those wild card spots into the early postseason and the wild cards into an epic postseason. And then last year, mercy. What an incredible display of baseball, Jason. That's pretty cool. I wanted to ask you this, though. As the CEO of Baseball Canada, I've always been kind of fascinated by the Blue Jays, and they're the only team in Canada. So when these guys, are playing well, like they have been the last number of years, they have a whole country behind them. And that's a very cool scenario in baseball.
Yeah, you know what? I think, if you understand us as Canadians, which I know you do, and probably the majority of the people listen to the podcast, but we love to support Canadian content and Canadian product. And, we understand a majority of those players that play for the Jays come from somewhere other than Canada, but it is our team, right? And I think that's a piece that, you hear the language from people. It's our team. It's our team. There's real ownership in this one team that's across, an entire nation and supported by a nation. So, them making the run that they had last year just really, it solidified it. I think, I'm trying to think if it was maybe 3 years ago, reading some articles on like the decline of popularity in baseball and fan base and some of those things. But you're right, man. Has it ever turned around in the last couple of years? And, it's starting to come back again. And the last 12 months just in this country has been outstanding. It's everybody's talking baseball. Friends of mine that don't even really watch baseball are talking about last night's game. People that are diehard hockey are checking both and they're keeping up and you hear people, they know the players' names. They knew our players on Team Canada going to the World Baseball Classic, coming from people that are non-traditional. I'm like, okay, this is good. This is good for us.
Yeah, really good. And there's so many storylines here, but I have to ask you, when the Blue Jays do well, Jason, what do you guys see at Baseball Canada? Is there a trickle-down effect, or is there an impact, say, on, well, we know the interest level. We saw the television ratings off the charts. But in terms of getting young players intrigued about this crazy game called baseball, do you guys see an impact, say, on registration?
For sure we do. And I think it's, it's not just the baseball world, but I think even – if you look at the Jays, if you go way back to the runs in 92, 93, but if you look to 2016, we saw kind of that bump in registration. We see it, with our friends at Hockey Canada, when the men's and women's team have a run over there. We saw it with the soccer world when they had their runs. Like, we know that registration is going up. And so, for us, registration processes started in some provinces and still going on in others. But, we've already heard early on that, some associations are sold out, they're full, they're at capacity. And so that is a good problem for us to have, but it still is a problem from a capacity issue. We want to get as many kids playing as possible. Are they going to be big leaguers? No. I mean, we know that, but the more kids that want to try the sport, play the sport, be active, like we need to, I think really give some thought to all those years around converting different spaces for different sports. I think that thought needs to go back to, we need to start converting some of these spaces back to baseball fields, because the interest level is there and I don't see it stopping. Like, we're the sport of baseball is on the upswing again. So as the Jays do well, absolutely do we do well. And I think last year's playoff run, we knew that was going to happen. And then for us to double down in the World Baseball Classic and have our run, and then that leading right into spring training, like it's, we took a little breather to put our hockey jerseys on and root for the Olympics, but it wasn't much of a breather. I mean, it's been baseball the whole time. So it's good when the Jays do well, we do well. And obviously when we do well, the sport does well. And it's exciting. It's very exciting for Baseball Canada.
Yeah, and there's a trickle down effect on that, Jason. I believe goes well beyond sport. You and I have talked about this before, but you're right. Getting people active, getting them doing different sports in the long game is such an important concept based on everything we know about just athlete, player development, but human development, right? Just being people. The social side of baseball in the game and sitting in the stands, there's no sport like it. Let's talk about this WBC, man, because after that World Series run against the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, I was in like withdrawal. Thank goodness for the Olympics. It gave my mind something to focus on. But when those Olympics were done, I'm like, what is going on here? I was with Olympic withdrawal. And then comes the WBC, this really cool tournament that Major League Baseball took the initiative on a few years back, 2005, 2006, I think is when they really started rolling it out, right? But what a beautiful thing this has turned out to be for sport. And now we're seeing, all the other sports, I guess the FIFA World Cup would kind of be the big one, the global one for a sport, but the WBC, and now you have like NHL talking about it. You got the NBA talking about it. Such a great thing again for sport.
Yeah, I think, when you said it, when you kind of watch that Olympic element, and then you go to the WBC, like that common denominator between the two is that sense of pride for your country. And it changes, like the dynamic changes. I can't even explain it to you. Just watching, some of the players that you see play all the time, say on the big league side, and they're obviously doing what they do on the big league side, but they put that Canadian jersey on and it's like there's some switch, something goes off, and you just see this, immense sense of pride. And it's funny watching, the biggest of the big league guys and guys who haven't been there yet, like mold so quickly on the teams that we have. But and then you see it on the field. I mean, you see it from every country. You see it, when you watch, those final games of Venezuela against US. I mean, it's just this massive sense of pride that it's incredible for sport. It's incredible for baseball.
Yeah. I've always been a fan of the all-star game in baseball. Some other sports, maybe not so much, but to see those guys, when they got it kind of figured out, now the American League guys, they're repping the American League. The National League guys, they're repping the National League, and there's a little bit of a rift there, man. That might have been the closest thing up until the WBC and maybe the Olympics, but the Olympics still a little bit different because of the lack of maybe major league players now. But this WBC, you got it, man. Baseball Canada, man, if that Maple Leaf, man, Jason, it looked like a brotherhood out there, man. Again, goosebumps just thinking about it. But watching the Dominican guys, there's such a flair with those Latino players, right? And they have such a cool approach to the game, and the crowds down there. The Venezuelan team, the Japanese, just seeing these guys representing their country takes everything to another level. It's such a precious thing.
Yeah, and you know what? The part what I love about it too is like it really flushes out the style that countries have in the way they play a sport, right? Like it is, some countries it's just going to be an absolute power game and we're going to try to overmatch you. And then, like Canada, I mean, it's no surprise we're just this grind, right? We're this team that's going to grind. We're going to battle you. We're going to fight you if we need to. Like, it is just, our style it's so interesting watching the different styles. And especially when you get some of those games of like, like a US Japan, if we had that matchup, but it's like just this power versus, finesse and how they play the game. Like that part is a baseball, enthusiast or someone who really loves, like, I love watching that's the best part for me.
Yeah, and Jason, you just sparked a massive memory. Like, I honestly, up until this last World Series, okay, the Blue Jays versus the Dodgers, that 7-game, just epic series, I've never seen. I love the game for starters, but I have never seen anything like that. And talk about grinding it out, gritty play on both sides. But up until then, I think, at least in my lifespan, for me personally, the best baseball I've ever seen was the last final of the World Baseball Classic. And you mentioned that Japan versus US. That there was something about that game. And you just connected a few dots for me. The different approach from Team US to Team Japan, and yet they're still battling for global supremacy in the game. That is actually quite fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it's funny that connection piece back to the Blue Jays. I described it last year when it was, this David and Goliath matchup, and everyone asked my opinion. They thought the Dodgers are going to blow them out, and I'm like, well, like, don't forget about that grinder kind of factor. Like that Jays team of last year was, in Canadian terms, was a fourth line grinding team that were showing up every day with, their lunch pail, and they were going to go to work and play the game the way that they played it. And I think, that's the piece that I say why the Canadian fan base loved these guys so much, because they were so relatable, right? They were even not being Canadian, they were very Canadian, right? And it's whether it's Ernie Clement or Schneider, like they just gave you that, these guys were our hometown guys.
Yeah, so much fun. And that, for me, is just one of the beautiful things that come out of sport, especially for those young kids out there who are still dreaming about, being one of those guys. I mean, for me, that's kind of what it's all about. Well, listen, Jay, as you know, I have 3 daughters in this family, and they've all played baseball to some degree. I'm excited about where the women's game is at as well right now. Like, I mean, in all sports, this movement towards professional women's sport, I think, is just tremendous for the landscape out there. And, with Major League Baseball kind of backing the first fast pitch women's pro league, which is a phenomenal game. And now the inaugural year of the first women's professional baseball league here, at least in the modern era. This is an exciting time, not just for our young boys, but also for our young girls, because now there's a pathway here, and I love that.
Yeah, well, that was always the piece I think that was missing is, okay, what is the pathway for a young female baseball player? Like, what does it look like? And I think over the last couple of years, we've always had that pathway of getting to a provincial team, to getting to a Baseball Canada National Championship. The one element that's been added in these last games, and excited for future games, is adding it into, women's baseball into the Canada Games for the first time, right? Like, that was another huge step, because you can kind of then see, and then to your point, the start of the Women's Professional Baseball League. And now that pathway is kind of, okay, I see where that goes, from my provincial team to a national championship to playing for Team Canada, with us, who we've got a qualifier this year, to maybe turning pro and becoming professional. And so that vision of what, young athletes can look towards, it says a lot. It really speaks to, where they can go and what they can do. But it also shows that people actually, are investing in, and not just saying they care about women's sport, but it's like actually investing and trying to make it better. And that's a part we've always really hammered on, is like, well, you can talk the talk, but let's walk it a little bit and prove what we're going to do to develop women's baseball. And so now we see it.
Well, and I'm going to honestly, just maybe a bit humbly here, I'm so proud of Baseball Canada. Like just from wearing them, being a Canadian, because I have been lucky enough to be, around you guys since I was with the Blue Jays. That's like 25, 30 some years ago. but helping out with some of the development camps. And I've seen what that junior national team does. But I also know on the women's side, Canada has really led the way and kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of other countries as a reference for women's development, the development of the women's game. The success of the Canadian team is just tremendous. Again, that Canadian flair to that team.
Yeah, I was sitting in a meeting a couple of years ago, and it was with, like us in the US and Mexico, and I'm trying to think of the other, it might have been maybe Chinese Taipei, and we were just talking about what we do to develop. And I think sometimes we forget how much we do. And as I explained, provincial teams and how that leads into a national championship and what we're working towards with Canada Games, like they were, everybody was in awe of what we were doing. Japan was in that meeting as well. And I assumed they would be the leader. And it's funny how we do things differently. They would have a huge high school presence, I guess, from a women's baseball side. Yeah. And they were envious of our grassroots programming. And at the same time, I was envious of their massive high school championship. But, what I took away from that is, don't forget how well we are doing. Like we do a lot. It's easier to kind of pick at, what we don't do or what we think we can do better. But every now and then you need to kind of stand back and say, you know what, we're doing a pretty good job. And we're developing the athletes that we want to develop. And our system is working, and we need to just keep, you need to keep grinding.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I can tell you this, my career's just been crazy lucky. It's like lightning in a bottle, right? Starting with the Blue Jays and then moving home because my parents' health and the new baby come in, and then Major League, the commissioner's office calling about the global development program, and then still being able to help you guys. But here's what I say to every coaching group or player group in Canada that I ever present to or I'm lucky enough to work with. One of the things I talk about all the time, Jason, is, hey, you guys should be proud because everywhere I have gone in the world, and I mean everywhere, Jason, in my travels with Major League Baseball, everybody asks about Baseball Canada and how they're doing it. Everywhere I go. As a matter of fact, my first time to Sweden, I was going up to Leksand, Sweden, this beautiful little town where they have a high school baseball academy, Major League Baseball. We're helping them, try to work on developing players there. I get in, I have no where I'm going. I fly in, get to the train station. I have no idea. These guys in baseball uniforms are standing there. I said, those got to be my guys. They shake my hand. And the first thing they say, they didn't say, hey, Jeff, how was the flight? They're saying, tell us about this Baseball Canada programs.
Yeah, right? I'm with you. Like I mean, obviously what I do, I'm kind of supporting the brand everywhere I go. I've got a lot of Baseball Canada clothing, and just in my own travels, it's funny, even in non-baseball situations, if I'm somewhere and I've got my hat on or a shirt on, somebody recognizes the logo and will stop and talk to me about their Rally Cap program that they're running in their local community, or talk about the player they've seen on the WBC, or talk about their time when they played or their kids are playing. Like it's pretty amazing to go and be recognized. And you're right. Like it's always positive. That's the thing, is it's always, hey, we love what you're doing. And made a difference with our kids, or made a difference with me, or, whatever it is. And you're right. Like it's always very positive. It's good. It's great to hear. I mean, you can imagine in my position, there's a lot of suggestions of how we could be better. So it's really nice to go out and you hear people talk about how well it's going and how they feel about Baseball Canada. So we're global. Baseball Canada is known globally. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, kudos to everybody there, Jason, because you're absolutely right. And what a great spot to be in. If you think about just organizational excellence, being sort of recognized as one of the most innovative in the world in terms of player development, coaching development as well. Let's not forget that huge part of the Canadian platform. But now looking at ways to make that even better. Like that's a pretty special place to be.
Yeah, no, it's there's always more work to do, no doubt. But we always take a moment to kind of be happy with what we've accomplished. But lots to do. There's always lots to do in our sport.
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to talk to you about a couple pathway things here that I feel are quite tremendous. And I do know one for sure is recognized globally. Maybe for me personally, with my involvement, maybe more so than anything else. I think our coaching program is sought after, and we know companies our countries out there are looking to replicate and use that as sort of a reference guide. But our junior national team, our boys U18 junior national team, Jason, that is a very special program for a number of reasons. But there's a couple of things that come out of that. The number of players who go through that program, then go on to college or sign pro, but then wind up in community somewhere giving back, right? And then not only that, but the players that aren't quite ready at that point in their time. Now, maybe you're not ready as a 16, 17, 18-year-old quite yet. The players that hit their development stride after the junior national team and still wind up contributing, right? There's so many pathways, but this junior national team is a pretty special thing.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact wording for that, for one of those NCAA commercials, but it said, I can't remember what it was, 99% of our athletes will graduate, something, whatever it was. The point was they're not all going to be professional athletes.
Right.
And, it's the same thing with our junior program. This is the elite of the elite, and a lot of these guys will get the opportunity to go to college, and you'll eventually see these guys, in the big leagues, a portion of them. But there's a lot that don't, and their experience or what they take away from the program really then leads them, to be better people. And not to sound, too fluffy, but it's true though, right? We're developing more than just athletes, right? We're trying to develop good people, help them understand what a good experience it is, what it's like to be around good coaching, and then they eventually get back into their own communities and become parents or become coaches or both. And you know what, they just kind of pass it along what they've learned. And I think the coaching component, you're right. Like, I think you can have maybe a subpar facility, maybe you don't have the best gear, maybe you don't have the best things to work with, but if you have a good coach, I think that is the separator. Someone that really, holds you accountable and drives you to be better and challenges you to be better. And, but at the same time is there to work with you. Cause with that junior team, 16 years old, like, it's such an awkward age where you're still trying to figure out who you are and am I good enough, and all the pieces that come into like that whole professional athlete side. That's the part that I think we love to develop. It's for the coaches that help with it, they always talk about that. That's the age where they can have the most influence and make the biggest difference in helping this athlete be a better baseball player and be a better person.
Yeah, I have to share a story with you, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but we all know the world's respect for Greg Hamilton. Like, oh my goodness, right? And all the people who've worked to get these programs where they are. But Greg in particular is a very special person, I believe. I was at one of the events where Greg was just out, looking at high school players, maybe looking for the next potential roster for the junior national team. And the kids all knew it, and the parents knew it, and the coaches knew it. But, Greg does his approach, and he was looking for, I think, the turnover was 3 or 4 players for the upcoming season of the junior national team. And he's coast to coast. That's what I love about that program as well. But here's the point of this story. Okay. Afterwards, Greg sat everybody down, and there were some major league scouts there, and there were college recruiters, but Greg just wanted to talk to the players. And I was just sitting, okay, this is going to be fantastic. But what he said, it stuck with me to this very, very day, Jason. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, so maybe you can help me out in some of this, but he basically sat the guys down and said, hey guys, look, really proud of where you're at. Great day, great showing today. But he goes, I want you guys to know that if you're not chosen for the junior national team right now, you got to understand there's an ebb and flow to development, right? You might not be, maybe it's not that you're not going to be at that level someday, but maybe it's just right now. So, there's a lot of different ways and pathways and times in your development where you're going to be able to contribute to the national team and more. And then Walt Burrows, like from the old scouting bureau, one of the great MLB scouts, stepped in afterwards and kind of mirrored the same thing from the pro perspective, which I thought was great. And then Greg and Walt were talking about, if you look at the number of Canadians who have actually played in Major League Baseball, here's a list of 5 guys who were not drafted. They weren't on the junior national team, and they were not drafted guys because they weren't quite ready at that time. but they kept with it. They found their pathway, and they wound up not just being major league players, but if you look at every one of those 5 guys they mentioned, Eric Gagne, Jeff Francis, I can't remember the other 3 guys, but I would have to go back in my notes, but 5 players who didn't just go to Major League Baseball, but were impact players there. And I thought that was one of the most powerful things I've ever heard in developmental sport, and it stuck with me to this very day.
Joey Votto would be on that list.
Joey Votto, yes,
right?
I think he was on that list, right?
Yeah, like you talk about an incredible player that just, you're right, just at the time wasn't ready. I mean, I even, at a much smaller scale, like I found out years later, John Harr, who was the coach of the team at the time, was my coach. I never realized I was the very last pick to make the junior national team the year that I played. No idea where I fit in. I just assumed I was, going to get cut, not going to make it. And you don't really know where you fit in, but to be, the very last pick to make that team and then to eventually get to the big leagues, you don't know. But it makes perfect sense. When I think about it later, I mean, in New Brunswick, I'm playing maybe 30 games a year. It's winter here, 8 months of the year. You're not getting a lot of reps. I'm 18 years old, but really have played, the amount of baseball that a 14 or 15-year-old would have played in the US, and you're just, you're not quite ready yet. And your pathway is going to be a little bit different. And baseball has such a long pathway. That's the difference, is you can be 17, 18 and not on anybody's radar and end up in the big leagues. It's crazy. Like hockey's very different. They really know, you have a pretty good idea where a kid is when they're 14 or 15 and maybe 16. But, I think baseball, it's very late. And that's why we encourage, guys to play other sports. You never know.
Yeah, it is the latest development sport in terms of professional athletes. The average age entering Major League Baseball is 24. The other sports are like 22, 21, even 18 if you look at some of them, right? It takes time in this crazy game called baseball. From that junior national team and talking pathways, the other thing that really, and I really want to share this because we have a global audience on the show here, so there's going to be people from all around the world listening to the show. The other thing that happens here, and I'm sure it happens in other countries as well, but I notice it here, maybe because I'm fairly close to you guys, the involvement of the alumni, ex-Major League players, ex-junior national team players who go on and do different things. But I am absolutely, what's the right word? Not flabbergasted, impressed, beyond impressed. I don't know what the proper word would be. When I look at the support and involvement of the alumni players who have worn that maple leaf. Oh, Jason, that might be one of the most special things, just as a on the wall observer that I see in this organization.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight knit group for sure. And I think it's, Canadians will always find other Canadians, like if you're watching any sporting event, you always point out, oh, that guy's Canadian or that girl's Canadian. I think there's an element of that. And I think back to what we were talking about is, a lot of our players, because we are not a massive country, come through that junior national team program or, through a Baseball Canada national championship. And, it kind of really makes an impression on who they are and what the experience was like. And for a lot of them might catch them at that time in their life where they're very impressionable. And, they come back. Our alumni, love to still hang out with each other. Still, it might be the one time a year they get together at a Baseball Canada event. But you're right, our alumni, I know it's very, very strong. It continues to be that way. We try to, our very best is introduce the new Team Canada, the new round of junior national team players, to the older guys who have already gone through the system and are now coaching, just to talk about, playing for your country and playing for Team Canada, and really understanding like this is a good developmental stop in your entire pathway. And it brings a smile to my face because I've got a lot of good friends that I played with. I may only get to see them once a year at a Baseball Canada event, but it's like time has never passed. And just knowing that you'll always be connected to them in that, through that Baseball Canada pathway.
Yeah, very, very special. We're talking with Jason Dickson, Chief Executive Officer for Baseball Canada, former Major League pitcher, Jason. Now, you kind of had an interest, and I just find it when you came through and made that junior national team, very different world than it is now. I really want to make sure we talk about this new initiative because I am absolutely enamored about this. And again, part of this is, my experience with Major League Baseball, the global experience, has it really gives you a special perspective. I know you have it now too, interacting with all the organizations all over the world. But looking at Europe or some of these areas, Africa, some of the areas where baseball is not really a main sport. There's tons of talent there. There are great coaches, and they're learning, and they're developing coaches. But the one thing that's missing is that competition, that high level of competition. So when those players get to that level where they've kind of mastered the skill set to apply it in the heat of battle on a regular basis against worthy opponents, that's a huge, huge part of the game. Something I think we're very lucky here in Canada, but I am very intrigued by the Road to Okotoks, Jason. Brand new initiative by Baseball Canada. I believe this could be, and again, I'm just shooting, from the hip here, but I believe this could be a real pathway developer for many, many players in Canada.
Yeah, when we started to look at just the landscape of baseball, and you're right, like what, how players are developing, how players are being evaluated. The one thing we kept hearing all the time was, okay, we are able to capture, the data that we can collect, I guess, through that showcasing method, and it still serves a purpose. I mean, we need to know velocity from kids and how fast they can run, and we need to see exit belos and all these other good things. But the one piece that came popping up was just this: we need more compete level, and we even started to see it a little bit with our junior national team. Like, Greg would have that discussion with some of these guys that, hey, just a reminder, you're trying out for Team Canada right now. This isn't a showcase. Like, so if we hit 95 on the gun today, but we throw it all over the field or halfway up the backstop, it doesn't work here. We need to see, like, can you compete? Can you compete in the strike zone? Can you compete when the pressure's on? Because our goal is not to, maximize your numbers here at Baseball Canada. We're trying to beat the Dominican and Cuba and the US and all these other teams. And so, we started looking at a tournament that could kind of get everybody under the Baseball Canada umbrella, because we've got a lot of different groups that are out there with respect to baseball, and create just a best on best national championship, and really put, take the pride of the, that these players have for the program that they play in, and put them head to head in a March Madness style event. And it's like, okay, everybody says they're the best. Let's figure out who the best is. And I think what we're really excited for is this one is we know conceptually is going to be there. And I think when we see it the first year, it's going to be fantastic. We want to then see that same compete level start to come back to what would be our Canada Cup, which is 17U, and then the Ray Carter Cup, which is 15U, because we talk about it internally, and Greg Hamilton and I talk about it a lot, because we still truly believe that province on province still has a lot of value. We see it in the Canada Games. Yeah. But I think it's that one element. We are, that aspect of why we're Canadian and how we love to really, blue collar it and grind. And that's the way that we play the game. I think we've maybe lost that a little bit. And so we're going to bring that back as Baseball Canada and say, you know what? Kids love to compete. They want to figure out who the best is, and let's put them in environments that are going to be good for their development, but teach them how to compete. I mean, before you ever learn how to win, you got to learn how to lose. Oh. And this is a game. I mean, it's a massive game of failure. You're going to be knocked down so many times, and it's just this is all part of hopefully we can kind of bleed this down through the Road to Okotoks, to our 17U Canada Cup, to our 15U Ray Carter Cup, and just really get a nation that loves to compete again in the sport of baseball.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And when we talk about that pathway, what a beautiful ebb and flow. And then for everybody out there who's not familiar with the long-term athlete development program, it has provided such an incredible structure to the design of athlete development, right? And it's continually building and adapting and growing and getting more precise as well. But I like that 15, again, you look at Norway and some of their success. And one of the big stories is, 13 and under, they don't even keep score. There's a lot to be said there. But there's also a time that we're talking about where competition is important. It's not when they're young, by the way. It is not. That's a time for learning skills and connecting dots and putting it together. But like you said, that 15U, that is a great time. Now, okay, we got an idea about this game. Kids have maybe decided that they love it. Here's a chance now to put it to the test, to learn, not to win, but to learn probably, right? And if you do get a win, well, that's awesome. You learn from the wins, you learn from the failures. And then the Canada Cup, and now the road to Okotoks. Jason, I really, really like this model, man.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I think you're going to see an event that will, is going to be very exciting for the people of Okotoks as well. Like, we're able to slide that into the middle of, the college season that's happening out there. I think the Okotoks venue, I mean, we know what that looks like. If you've never been there as a baseball fan, I mean, it's a professional minor league complex. The fan base is tremendous, and we're hoping to draw, those fans to these games and put, like we said, put these athletes in front of crowds of, 3,000 to 5,000, and that's a whole other element of learning how to really compete. And I think the one thing I would say too, if I can back up a little bit, because you hinted on it, and I'll be more direct with it. Competing is not winning. Like, that's the part that people say, well, it's not always about winning and losing. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. It's about competing. I can go out and lose 10-0, but you know what? Did I compete today, or did I just lay down and quit? And I think that's the piece that we're trying to build more resilient athletes, because it's not going to be easy. You're going to get your lunch handed to you. And even on your best days, you're still going to get it handed to you, but there's going to be days where you're going to come out on top. And I think you need to experience those tough times, learn from them, build from them, and just be resilient. And it's not just a baseball thing. Like, you're not going to get into the university you want to. You're not going to get the job that you wanted. You're not going to get the promotion that you wanted. Like, times are going to be tough with throughout your life. And we're just trying to build that resiliency. So it's like, okay, it didn't go my way this time. I learned from it, and I'm going to keep moving forward. Right. We can't just quit and say that we're going to do something else. Like, we need to compete. And I think, we really see it in the baseball world, and we know it's going to transition to life.
Yeah, wow, I love that. And you're so right. And again, that might be the very essence of the whole developmental model. Compete, but learn from, right? We always say, look back to learn, look forward to plan, and man, live in that moment, because they're fleeting, right? They're very fleeting. Well, hey, a couple more things before we let you go. Just a fantastic discussion today. But I did want to get to this. A few fun things now. Looking at Major League Baseball, the start of the season's underway, of course, and I'm a huge fan. Of course, I have the Krush storylines, players, teams to watch, but I wanted to throw a couple of things at you. On the recording of this show, we are on the very day that the Mets are about to meet the Dodgers, the 2026 version of those clubs. This is going to be a historic 3-game series at Dodger Stadium, because it is going to be the most expensive baseball series in the history, maybe of sport. I'm going to go sport, baseball for sure. There's going to be $1 billion+ of payroll, involved in this series in baseball. And there's some intrigue there. I mean, I'm intrigued to see how it goes. You have the Dodgers right now, as we record this, they are running away with the NL East, and you have the Mets, who are at the basement of their division right now. So two of the biggest teams, different levels. It's a fascinating part of the game right now, Jason.
Yeah, like I think, I mean, in the larger, I'm excited for the series as well. The part I love about baseball is, like you just said, you got the Dodgers on one side, the Mets on the other, but the Mets could sweep the Dodgers in that series. Who knows with the sport of baseball? But you're right, there is a lot of dollars on that field. I'm sure the insurance companies who have all those guys insured are watching that series very closely as well. And I think that's you're kind of seeing some of that discussion trickle into what's going to happen for next year around the new collective agreement and salary caps and all those. And obviously been on both sides as a player or as a player rep, as now kind of in the world of management and watching it. And I think there's obviously some big discussions that have already started, but there might be a little bit of a correction maybe needed to our sport to kind of figure that out. I mean, I went through the minor leagues in tough times and worked for next to nothing. So when those big contracts come, I'm like, they're more than deserving. But at the same time, I think what we're trying to get to at the end of the day is some level of balancing the league out so it's competitive all the way around, and at the same time that the costs don't get so high that families can go and enjoy baseball, right? I think that's a big piece at the end of the day. Is if you're in a stadium and nobody's showing up because it's too expensive, it's not as fun. You're not inspiring the next generation if it's that way. So there is a balance in between. I know that's kind of a fence sitting answer, but what I know for certain, what I don't want to see is a stoppage next year in baseball. I hope we're playing this time next year and we've got things sorted out. Yeah, fingers crossed. Absolutely.
For sure. I hope calmer heads prevail, because the game is in such a beautiful place right now. And I believe those things are just a matter of negotiating out. But I agree with you. I think for me, I'm with you, Jason. One of the biggest things is this has got to be accessible for families of 4 and families of 5. Or if you want to take your little league team, you shouldn't have to, collect bottles and fundraise for 2 years to take your kids to a ball game, to see a ball game. So important to have that accessibility. Really important. Hey, the other thing before we go, kind of a fun question. We're gonna step away from the CEO hat. Let's put on your former player hat here, because I really want your honest opinion of this from the player's perspective, from the pitcher on the mound where you were. The ABS, the automated balls and strikes. Yeah. Okay, when they started talking about it, I was watching it in the minor leagues. I'm going, the umpires are such an integral part of the game. I have such mixed emotions about this, and I'm not quite sure where I sit right now. But I wanted to ask you straight out, Jason. Do you have an impression as a pitcher, as a former player, about the challenge of balls and strikes?
Yeah. You know what? I do. I have a couple different views on it. Like at first I was very uncertain, almost skeptical of it, because I do love the human element that is the umpire. They're going to make mistakes, and they're going to get calls right, but just that human element of it. But then there's another angle of, when the game gets down, to those important times, and I think about it from my days of officiating basketball, when I was, officiating basketball years ago. It's like at the end of the day, we just want the call to be right. And so if it requires a challenge or a conference of the officials to maybe overturn a call, everybody put your pride away and let's make the right call. So the game is decided by the athletes and maybe not, an error that the human side makes. Now, then I'll go back to if I actually have my pitching hat on, and for anybody that, knew, I guess, kind of my style, I was never on the plate and a command guy. So I lived an inch or two off the plate and banked on people taking swings and some umpires maybe helping me expand the zone along the way. So the ABS back in my day was, if you're going to force me to throw strikes within that box, I might have an issue. I needed to work the corners and change speeds and see if I get people to stretch the zone. So I don't know. It'd be interesting on that one. I don't think I was ever looking to elevate fastballs at the top of the zone. I also didn't throw upper 90s, so maybe that's why. But you know what? Overall, I was very skeptical coming into the season, but you know what? I actually really like it. I actually do like it. It's quicker and more efficient than I thought it was going to be. I wondered about that umpire-catcher dynamic, right? Because that's a very close relationship, and now we're challenging publicly all the time. Umpires are getting booed on bad calls, and it's like, I don't know if everybody has ever umpired before, but you're talking about something that's coming in at 97 miles an hour with movement. And I'm amazed at, these are like 1 millimeter, they're like just barely on the edge of the strike zone, and somebody knows that that's a strike in the challenge. I'm like, these guys are so good. Both sides are so good. But overall, I do like it. I think if it helps get us make the right call at the right time in a big game, then it's successful.
It's almost like you and I wrote the same notes down. I have it written right here. I was very skeptical to start with. I wasn't sure. Okay. I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. That's one thing that concerned me, because we've done actually a pretty good job of shortening the game a little bit so far, right? But is this going to add to it? But I love it, man. And you know what I love even more is when the fans are cheering for the call. Hey, we got a challenge, and whether it's right or wrong, cheers are boo. People are booing, people are cheering. The one thing I'm still worried about, and honestly, I think the media has done a great job here. So hats off to the media, is not getting down on the umps, because you think hitting a ball is hard, calling those pitches with that accuracy is very, very hard. And I think I've been fairly impressed, Jason, so far on how we worked with the umpires on this. Not criticize them, though they're still getting their boos and stuff, but it's a tough job.
Yeah, I'd love to see at the end of the season if they compile all of the challenges and which ones were right and which ones were wrong, and some calculation or some numbers that kind of said, you know what, half the time the umpire is right, half the time the player is right. And I think if it's that way, then okay, great, it's going to balance itself out. Because if everybody says, well, the umpire should be right all the time, then I'm going to argue you've never umpired. Yeah. It's a hard job. These are the highest velocities with more movement and more than we've ever seen in the sport. And literally like inches, fractions of inches off the corner of a plate. Like that's not an easy job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I'm really enjoying it, because I find myself too, challenge the call, because we get to see the box, of course, and they don't challenge. We're going, oh, it's for the fan experience. I think it's a little extra something, man, that gets me involved a little more in the game. I'm loving it, man.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think it's, like you said, it's efficient, which is good, because we've done so much work to speed up the game of baseball. And so this is not taking away from it at all. And I think it's good. I'll be curious to see how they feel about it at the end of the season. What is the next move? What are the next things that we're looking at? So it's trying to, it's all in an effort to make our game better.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And then maybe on a final note, great segue there. Canada is world renowned for the coaching development and coaching support programs that you guys have in place, not just in baseball, but across the board. And that's something that I think every Canadian should be proud of. And also, people who go out and wind up coaching and getting jobs out there on the coaching side of things, because it's not just players now. We've got great Canadian coaches all over the world in almost every single sport you can imagine. So that's something to be proud of too. Hey, listen, I just wanted to quickly mention, with the program we have, Creating Coachable Players, and our collaboration with Baseball Canada, I'm very proud, at least if this is the way I can give back and maybe work, I'm very proud of this. But I want to thank you guys for embracing this idea. It's the idea of the Creating Coachable Players program is to, we have great coaches. They know the technical, tactical side of the game. But when we look at the injury rates, Jason, this has been haunting me for about a decade now. And those numbers are not going down. They continue to rise at every level of the game. And so just, think, what can we do to alleviate the injury trends we're seeing in the game at every level of the game? And for me, it goes back to the competitive season, supporting the coaches for sure, but properly preparing players for this crazy thing called baseball, primarily the throwing motion in baseball. So, our program, Creating Coachable Players, very excited about this initiative as we kick it off this spring.
Yeah, like you and I have talked about it at length. Like the injury rate is higher than it's ever been, and you're right, it's scary. And it's not so much the injury rate at the pro level. The injury rates at the younger levels is, it's astonishing the number of kids that have Tommy John. Yep. Like it's staggering, right? And as a parent and as a former player, like you're right, like it almost gives you that sickening feeling. It's like, okay, we got to do something. Like somebody's got to do something. And I think that's a piece, you and I talked about a lot, and we don't know all the answers, but we're two of many, many people are trying to figure out, like, what is the solution? And if that means we can, educate coaches more to understand around why pitch count is needed and what proper rest looks like, and help athletes and parents understand that, rest is important, and good nutrition and sleep and taking care of your body and all those elements that it's important to young development. And at the end of the day too, you're not getting to the big leagues when you're 14, 15, right? Like, you almost want to say live to pitch another day. And I think sometimes, we unintentionally overuse, and I just, you wish kids would just get out and maybe, just play the game a little bit more instead of these just very organized times that they're allowed to compete. I think that may be part of the element too, is a strategy around trying to figure out how much to throw and how much to rest.
Yeah.
And you know what, I would say this, I would say probably one of the biggest challenges when you talk about educating parents. Obviously, when it comes to the world of baseball and having played and now in it, I feel like I understand it. I don't know if I'd ever call myself a subject matter expert, but I feel like I do know a lot. But you could easily pluck me out of this world and you were to drop me in the world of hockey. I could take coaching courses and I could organize and I could understand, but I don't know if I really truly know what is needed to develop a good athlete. And so I need somebody to teach me, like, help me, teach me. I want to be better. I want to do what's right for the kids. And I think maybe that's the part where we can come in, is like, let's try to educate and make coaches just better, beyond X's and O's or what the practice plan looks like for today. And can we just make them better overall coaches? And we know that that'll trickle down, right? If you have a good coach in your community who will teach other coaches in the community, we can build a base of coaching that, I think when we finally get to that tipping point where everybody throws their hands up and says, okay, the number of Tommy John surgeries have to stop, right? We know we've got a crisis, but until we actually identify it as a real crisis, then we'll deal with it. But yeah, I'm with you. We think about it every day and try to figure out what is the solution, and if we can do our part for trying to educate coaches and parents on what their kids maybe need, then we're trying to do our part.
Yeah, understanding growth and development, understanding the athlete side, the sport demands, and preparing athletes at every age for that. And as they go through the system, just really important stuff. And that might be one of the biggest opportunities in sport right now, I believe, as well, for preventing injuries, and also, just helping kids have fun at the game. It's hard enough. But if we can develop a little bit of that athleticism, one, to reduce that risk of injury, but help them have a little more success in the game, mission accomplished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Great stuff, Jason. Well, hey, listen, thanks. Fantastic conversation here early in the MLB season. Let's watch this Mets and Dodgers series with great interest. And boy, as the year unfolds and as we approach the road to Okotoks, maybe we'll chat again and see how things are looking on the other side of all that.
Absolutely. Always happy to always talk baseball. You know that. We've talked baseball for many, many years now, and great to be on the show and just, share what we know. And I'm always curious to hear what others are thinking about the world of baseball and their opinion on it. So it's, I love talking baseball. So anytime you need me, I'm in.
Awesome. Be careful what you wish for, mister.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Okay, just a fantastic conversation with Jason. I knew that's what it was going to be. I've known Jason for quite a few years. He was at Blue Jays, our Major League camp with the Blue Jays when I was there. So I got to know Jason way back in the early 2000s when he was still pitching on a Major League Baseball mound. And then over the years, we stayed in touch, and through involvement with Baseball Canada, and now he's the CEO. So I knew that conversation was going to be that powerful. What a great perspective, right? And no matter where you're at in the world, there's a lot to take away from this conversation, just about pathways, the influence of the game, how important the pro guys are, but the women's game. I just love that whole side of the sport. And Canada is one of the leading countries there, the US being the other, just dominant. I guess kind of like women's hockey as well. It's Canada, US. I can't wait till some of the other countries catch up and start challenging. That will be just great for women's sport. But I love that conversation about the women's sport, and more importantly, the pathways that Canada provides for players through youth development. But then they start focusing on, hey, let's get kids really good competition. Let's start teaching them how to play, not to win. Let's make that perfectly clear. And Jason made a point of stepping back and talking about that. The goal's not to win at all, because you don't control winning. In all of our programs, even when we sit down with our professional players, our hockey players are coming off season right now. Our baseball guys are going into it. It doesn't matter if we're talking with our national team or Olympic type style athletes. Winning cannot be the goal. One of the things we do with all of our athletes, we sit down early in their off season and we just revisit the landscape with them. And we do this thing I call the controls and uncontrollables. We just make a simple list of, hey, what is exactly do you control and what don't you control? And you should do this. It's part of our Creating Coachables course as well, our coaching course for baseball. I actually take the coaches through this, and I encourage coaches to do that at the start of every season. It doesn't matter if we're working with the little duffers or right up to our elite high school, college, or even our pro players. It is interesting when you look at those lists and how they change as athletes grow, get more experience, and they mature, not just in sport, but in life. The things they mention on what they do control and what they don't control, it's fascinating. I should actually show you guys one day on the show. I'll make a point of doing that, is actually showing you the difference between one of our mature major league players or professional athletes in any sport as opposed to some of our youth development kids. I mean, we work with kids as young as 13, 14 years of age, just trying to keep them healthy and on the right track so they can maybe chase down their dream and see how far they can go, right? But that's a really important thing. The competition side, as we said with Jason, that's a really important part of the long-term plan. But competition, if that's the main focus, pure competition can take away sometimes more than it gives back. And I do believe that's what we're seeing in the game right now when we talk about the injury rates that we're seeing, okay? The number of games, the number of high-intensity tryouts, the number of showcases, the early selection of players is ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. We don't know how good a player is going to be. And if you go back to our last episode of Krush Performance with Dr. Gulish, right? 90% of all future elite developers were not great performers through those key years, 13, 14, 15, 16. And even Jason said he was the last pick for the junior national team. He had no idea that he was going to be picked, and he had no idea what his role was there, but it happened. And then, of course, he battled through and went on and made his way to the big leagues. And that was not projected, until he got to that 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age sometimes. So I think, we've maybe lost sight a little bit of what that youth level is all about. And guys, this is where the opportunity is. I know this is where the opportunity is, because that's where the damage is being done. The damage is being done in youth development, the dropout rates, the injury rates. Kids get hurt, they don't want to play anymore. But also in that critical period where players are actually growing, getting taller, maturing, they're physically growing. Okay, their long bones are getting longer, especially in a game like baseball. Though, if you go back and go back and listen to our conversation with the guys from the Cleveland Cavaliers, Ed Subel, they're seeing the same thing in the NBA. The same thing. Our guys in the NHL, if you go back and listen to our show with the performance team from the Edmonton Oilers, they're seeing the same thing in NHL hockey. Damaged players entering the league at their draft ages. Damaged goods. What an opportunity for players, for an organization, team, or family to really understand growth and development. And again, that's kind of, our last point, that Creating Coachable Players course that we're doing in collaboration with Baseball Canada. That's what it's all about. We could literally do it for every single sport. Okay. And it's not that you can only know so much, right? So we're trying to share this incredible information that we've learned over 30 years about athlete development, preparing athletes for sport demands, but also preparing athletes at every age to be more coachable. How do we train an athlete to move better? How do we train them to protect their arm and throw better? Well, one is, of course, as Jason said, pitch counts. But listen to me carefully. If you follow me on social media, you will know my stance on pitch counts. Pitch counts are one small piece of a very, very big puzzle that is managing throwing athletes. Pitch counts represent volume of throwing overall. And that's important to know. It is critically important. Let me get it clear. But on top of that, you also have this other thing called intensity. Intensity, how hard they throw. Maximum effort throwing is one of the biggest contributors to the injury rates at every level of the game. Okay, and at the higher levels of the game, we used to see a pretty good difference between a fastball and an off-speed pitch. But not only are fastball velocities going up, the velocity of every single pitch is increasing the maximum effort workload that every player is experiencing. And then we're asking players, because we can now, with all the technology, see spin rates and see the rotation of the ball. We may be asking players to do things with that ball that maybe physically they're not quite ready to do yet. When do we know? Well, that's part of the process, right? And again, athletes grow and develop at different rates, right? We can take a 12-year-old, all right? And you know, in the late 90s, I actually did a study, you know, and coming out, I had my university brain still. I was curious and I wanted proof and I wanted data. So I was working with a group of high school players, and, you know, it was age 13, I think, to 16 years of age, but the maturity levels, not just the emotional maturity levels of these players, the physical maturity levels of these guys wasn't 1 or 2 years or 3 years. It was man, we had 15-year-olds that had a bigger beard than me. And then we had 15 and 12-year-olds who still looked like, you know, really young players. And it got me thinking about all the research on the aging and the development of young players. The chronological age, right? The actual date and time of birth dates. The physiological age, how their physical development differs from the chronological timeline. And then, of course, you have your emotional age, and then experience age, training age, and all these layers that make up this beautiful performance cake that turns out to be player development, right? Well, what we know is that for a player, let's take that 12-year-old, you can have a 12-year-old, okay, and you can have plus or minus 2 or 3 years of physical development, right? Which means you can have a 12-year-old in a 11, 10, 9-year-old body. You can also have a 12-year-old in a 13, 14, 15-year-old body. And some research goes as far as saying discrepancies of 4 years. That means a 16 to an 8-year-old. And they're all 12-year-olds. Something for coaches to be aware of, right? It doesn't change the purpose of training it for 12-year-olds. It's to get them out there, have them fun, get them playing the game, working together. But in terms of what we're seeing in the game today, the injury rates, the number of games we play, the length of the season, the lack of just free fun play, these are all opportunities for parents, coaches, and organizations to capitalize. And the data is all there. And you know, that collaboration we have with Baseball Canada on creating coachable players, that's what it's all about. It's teaching coaches about growth and development, the science, not my opinion. Listen, man, we don't make the rules. I don't make the rules. We've just learned. We spent a ton of time understanding and learning what the rules are so we can build a matrix that fits inside that model. And that's why some of our players are the most successful on planet Earth. Okay, in the development wise. Now, whether they're successful or not, I'm not sure. We don't know. And this is one thing we say to every single athlete, every single year, no matter what level they're at. Do we know how good you can become? I could be talking to a 10-year veteran of Major League Baseball. Do we know how good you can become? No, we don't, because there's probably still things we can do. And for a 12-year-old, anybody trying to scout or predict the future performance of a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, even an 18-year-old, it's a ludicrous task because you cannot. You can see where they're at right now. You can try to decide how you can best help them get to the next level of their game, whatever that looks like. But you cannot predict what they're going to look like 4, 5, 6 years down the road, right? Keep in mind what we said with Jason there too. The average age for a player breaking into Major League Baseball is 23, 24 years now. Okay. Other sports, it's 21, 20, 18, 19 years of age. It takes longer to develop baseball players because it's such a skill game. You might see a similar thing in golf. I think if we looked at professional golf, I'll look those numbers up. And maybe tennis as well. Tennis is a very exacting, unforgiving skill sport as well. You're exposed. You have to have that skill set. It takes time to develop those skills. The physical readiness has to happen alongside the physical development. And that's I believe, where we're missing a real huge opportunity. And that's the essence of that course that we're collaborating with Baseball Canada on, Creating Coachable Players for baseball coaches. We're launching it. There's a live webinar coming up soon, so keep your eyes open for that, okay? But man, such a fun conversation talking about the automated balls and strikes. And honestly, I like it. Will we see that in the minor levels? I don't think we need to worry about it. But what a huge fun thing it's turned out to be. As long as we still respect the challenges those umpires face, hats off to every man and woman that gets behind the plate or dons a referee or a umpire's uniform. because that is a tough job. I like that we're getting the calls right, but I also like that it gives us something to cheer about, man. I love when there's a challenge, and then, you know, the challenging team, if they're the opponent of your team, you know, you're going, man, and they don't get the call. Everybody's cheering, right? Or you're watching it and go, challenge that call, and they don't challenge it. So many great things come of that. I think it's a fun spin on the game, and it's not taking as much time as I thought. Okay, really, really, really well done for Major League Baseball. All right. So great conversation, you guys. We got a lot more of this coming up in the near future. We're going to be talking talent and talent development with our good friend, Krush Hall of Famer, Joe Baker, and some of his colleagues. They've started a new company, and this is going to be a great spin-off of our conversation, our last show with Dr. Gulish, talking about developers and the age of development for players. That was a fascinating conversation. We're going to build on that, and then we're going to get back into some nutrition and biochemistry stuff. There's some very interesting new research out when it comes to what athletes should be doing to fuel their performance, right? Fueling their performance. Speaking of that, we've been into that for 20 plus years, and we are doing some special things. So there's some special things going on out there because we understand more. Okay, we can't just sit back and keep doing what we've been doing. That's the definition of insanity. So constantly pushing the envelope to help our athletes reach their potential, whatever that might be. And that's what I would hope and wish for every one of you guys. All right. So, hey, again, any questions, comments, smart remarks, reach out, info@jeffrochelle.com. Search me out on social media, Krush Performance, Instagram. We're very active right now. I'm getting better at it. Facebook, we're doing a bunch there as well. So if you want to follow us, please do. And getting a lot of messages there too. I'm enjoying that interaction. I've never done it before, but getting messages and responding and getting conversations going back and forth, man, that is what it's all about. So I'm really enjoying that. So please do follow us there and share the show. Hey, if you're a baseball family, coach, or organization, this is a great show for you to share with your colleagues in the game. All right. Okay. Get out there, you guys. Have a great week. If you're playing ball, have a good time, and we'll talk to you next time right here on Krush Performance.
Find out what it takes to be a top performer. Get the Krush blog, podcast, and newsletter at crushperformance.com.
Goodbye now. Don't forget to ride.